Good morning, everybody. I hope that this video finds you all in healthy conditions. I hope that you're staying safe and that you're not giving your parents too much of any extra stress while you're in there. Today, I decided to choose a book, again, that is a true story. As you are seeing a pattern, I think you could tell that I like books that deal with stories of history and how people got through a lot of different obstacles. The last book I read was about the Red Cross, and I hope you found it to be enjoyable for yourself, and I hope you learned a little bit more about what the Red Cross was about. And today I am going to read a story called Kate Shelley and the Midnight Express by Margaret K. Whitterer. I'm going to read a little bit of her notes so that you know a little bit of background from this story before I actually dive into the story. Catherine Carroll Shelley, otherwise known as Kate, was born in Ireland on September 25, 1865. Before she was a year old, her parents brought her to America. They bought a small farm near the town of Iowa. Kate's father built a house overlooking Honey Creek, within sight of the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad line, and farmed the land. He also took a job with the railroad. After Kate, there were four more children: James, Mamie, Margaret, and John. Life in the Shelleys' isolated cottage was hard but satisfying, full of good friends and good times. Then, when Kate was 13, her father died. Less than a year later, 10-year-old James drowned in the Des Moines River. Mrs. Shelley never really recovered from those tragedies. Kate took over more and more responsibility for running the farm and caring for her younger children. When a raging storm hit the Des Moines River Valley and lives hung in the balance, Kate did not hesitate to face danger and go out alone into the night to do what she believed was her duty. That's a little background history of this particular book. And as you know, from what I've read, she grew up with other siblings, but at the age of 13, her father passed away, and her 10-year-old brother drowned in the river. And in those time frames, much like these times, those were tragic situations for her, and having to be a child and have to deal with obstacles. I'm going to go into the story a little bit so we can find out a little bit more about what Kate ended up doing. 15-year-old Kate Shelley pulled the sheets from the line. A terrible storm was coming. Kate could feel it in the air. A cold wind rose as she carried the heavy basket back to the house. Black clouds rolled in. The sky grew dark. Kate stood at the kitchen window with her younger sisters and brother. They saw a lightning flash. They heard thunder crack in the hills. Then the rain came. As the rain poured down, they watched the water rising in Honey Creek. Soon it overflowed its banks and flooded part of the yard. I'm going to let the animals out of the barn, Kate said. If the water keeps rising, they could drown. Be careful you don't slip in the water, her mother warned. Kate ran down the hill. She waded through muddy water to the barn. She let out the two horses and shooed them off to higher ground. She drove the cows up the hill, then she hurried back to the barn. She picked up some piglets and carried them to the house. By this time, she was soaked to the skin. Kate put on dry clothes and went back to the window. The rain had not let up. The flood water was coming closer to the house. When lightning flashed, Kate could see the shining railroad tracks. They ran all along the other side of Honey Creek. Kate peered through the rain, trying to see the railroad bridge over Honey Creek. How was it holding up in the storm? After supper, the young children went to bed. 9-year-old Mamie wanted to stay awake with her mother and Kate. They sat at the kitchen table talking about the dangers of the storm. They were worried about the men out working on the railroad. At midnight, an express train would pass the Monongahela station without stopping. It would cross the long bridge over the Des Moines River. Then it would cross the bridge over the Honey Creek near Kate's house. Were the bridges safe? Were the bridges safe? Shortly after 11 o'clock, Kate and her mother heard an engine chugging slowly down the tracks. Railroad men were checking the tracks and bridges before the express came through. They were heading toward the bridge over Honey Creek. Suddenly, the engine's bell rang wildly. Then Kate heard a terrible crack. She knew at once that the bridge had broken. Kate heard the hot engine hiss as it hit the cold water. She jumped to her feet. "Oh, mother," she cried. "They've gone down in Honey Creek. I must go help." The crash woke the children. They watched silently as Kate pulled on a jacket and the old straw hat. Then she lit her father's railroad lantern. "You can't go, Kate," her mother said. "It's too dangerous." "I have to go, mother," Kate answered. "Someone may still be alive in Honey Creek. And I have to stop the Midnight Express." "Please, Kate," her mother cried. "Don't go." The flood waters were almost at our door. "If that were father down there, wouldn't we want someone to help him?" asked Kate. "You're right," her mother agreed. "Go ahead then, but be careful. We'll be praying for you." Kate could not cross the flooded yard to get to the broken bridge. Instead, she started up a path behind her house. She would reach the tracks where they ran through the hills. Water poured down the hillside. Kate climbed over fallen trees. Her skirt caught in wet brambles. Her shoes sank in the mud. But she held her father's lantern before her and kept going. At last, she reached the tracks. Kate ran along the tracks, back to the broken bridge. She looked out over the dark waters of Honey Creek. She could not see the engine or any of the crew. Had they all drowned? Then Kate thought she heard a shout. In the roar of the storm, she was not sure. She listened again. Yes, someone was calling. Lightning flashed. Kate saw someone holding on to the branches of a treetop just above the water. Thunder boomed. As it faded, Kate heard voices calling again. She could hear two men's voices now, but she couldn't make out their words above the howl of the storm. Hang on, Kate shouted. "I'll get help." Kate swung the lantern back and forth. Now the men would know she had heard them and was going for help. Kate began to run toward the Menagoa station. There wasn't much time. She had to get to the station before midnight, before the express. Kate ran along the tracks. Even before she reached the Desmones River Bridge, she could hear the rush of flood water. She held up the lantern to light her way over the bridge. But as she did, a fierce wind blew out the lantern's small flame. Kate stared into the darkness to reach the station. She had to cross this river. The long wooden bridge stretched before her. Beside the tracks was a narrow walkway. Some of its boards were missing. There was no handrails to hold. Kate was afraid to cross this bridge, even in daylight. Could she do it now in the storm in the dark? Kate thought of the men in Honey Creek. She thought of all the people on the train speeding toward the broken bridge. She got down on her hands and knees and began to crawl across. Kate felt for gaps in the walkway so she would not fall through. Nails and splinters cut her hands and knees and tore her skirt. She gripped the steel rail of the tracks to keep the wind from sweeping her over the side. Trees and logs in the flooded river crashed against the bridge, making it shake. When she reached the middle of the bridge, great flashes of lightning suddenly lit the night. She looked up. A huge tree was coming down the river, straight towards her. Surely it would crash through the bridge. Kate closed her eyes and prayed. In the next moment, the river pulled the tree down under the water. Kate felt the tree scrape beneath the walkway. Then it was gone. Kate was shaken with fear, but she could not stop to rest. She knew it must be almost midnight. She had to reach the station before the midnight express. At last, Kate's hand touched land. She had crossed the river. The Mwangata station was less than half a mile ahead. She got to her feet and began to run. Her heart pounded. Her throat ached. But through the rain, she saw the lights of the station. Kate threw open the station house door. The men inside turned and stared. Kate's clothes was torn and muddy. Water dripped from her old straw hat. She tried to speak, but no words came. At last she gasped. The engine went down in Honey Creek, stopped the express. Then she sagged to the floor. The girl must be crazy, someone said. But the station agent knew Kate. She means a bridge is out, he shouted. We must stop the express. He rushed to the telegraph and tapped out a message to Ogden, the station before Moingona. Stop express. Bridge out. Stop express. Another man grabbed a lantern. Then he ran out to the platform. He would flag down the express if the telegraph message was too late. The express, with 200 people aboard, was still speeding toward the broken bridge. But Kate's warning had come on time. Railroad men stopped the train in Ogden. It was the last telegraph message sent or received that night. The storm knocked out telegraph service for 40 miles along the line. Someone helped Kate to a chair. Someone gave her a glass of water. 2 men are still alive in Honey Creek, Kate said. I saw them holding on to trees and water. Let's try to save them before they're washed away, a man said. Would you help us, Kate? Another man asked. Would you show us where they are? Kate rode the engine with the rescue party. They crossed the Des Moines River on the same bridge Kate had crawled over. The engine stopped at the broken bridge on Honey Creek. Everyone shouted and the men in the water answered. They were still hanging on, but there was no way to reach them from that side of the flooded creek. Kate led the rescue party into the hills behind her house. She led them through the woods to a bridge further upstream. There they crossed Honey Creek and at last rescued the 2 exhausted men. Afterward, Kate went home and slept for a long time. When she awoke, her family, friends, and neighbors greeted her happily. They wanted to hear about her adventure. Reporters came. Newspapers across the country told the story of her bravery. Soon, the whole nation knew about Kate Shelly. The railroad company gave Kate $100 and a lifetime pass on the railroad. Poems and songs were written in her honor. The state of Iowa awarded her a gold medal. But of all the honors given to her, Kate liked the one from her railroad friends best. Whenever she rode the train home, they stopped it to let her off right in front of her own house. This was a book that I chose again because in a very desperate situation, there was a 15-year-old young lady who decided that she was going to do something to try to save the people that she thought was in danger. I understand that this book was made, well, the story was created in about the 1800s. And this being a real story also talks about the time frames that people lived in, because now we travel through planes or we travel through buses and taxis. But in this little town of Iowa, there was just trains, and trains were older back then. That was their way of getting across bridges and getting from one state to another when they had to make long distance traveling. Imagine for 1 second if you was on a train and all of a sudden the bridge was washed out, and how would you get over? There's so much history in this particular book, but there's also a lot of hidden messages. Another thing that we don't talk about is the way they communicated. Back in those days, they had telegraph machines. Telegraph machines were messages that cruise ships or train stations in this situation used to communicate from when they wanted to send a serious message or a message at all that could have saved their life. And in this situation, that telegraph machine was what helped the other train that Kate wanted to stop save 200 people. I thought this book was very interesting, and I thought it showed outstanding bravery for a child that was 15 years old. Just think about the fact and go back in history where she had lost her brother and she had lost her father at a young age. In this story, even in the face of things that she had to overcome in her personal obstacles, she also found it bravery and not robbery that in the midst of everything that she was dealing with in her personal life, that she had to do something that stood up for other people. I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope that you take some time, and if we ever get back to the libraries, that you choose to get this particular book. Maybe we can do a book club or some questions and answers later about it. It's called Kate, Shelly, and the Midnight Express, and I hope that you'd enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day.